craft and pass legislation that solves problems or improve the quality of their lives. However, legislatures also have another important job, and that's to ensure that the government functions in a manner that is efficient, transparent, and accountable. That is why I held a special press conference last week to discuss the alleged corruption that has come to light regarding the City of Pritchard's Water Board and the fraudulent misuse of public funds. Without going into all the details in this particular case, it highlights the immediate need we have in Alabama for stronger government oversight when appropriate, swift intervention, and accountability. When these issues first began to surface in Pritchard, people followed the proper channels, and in 2018, there was a formal complaint filed with the State Ethics Board. In fact, I worked alongside Senator Vivian Figures and the Mobile delegation to pass a constitutional amendment to dissolve the Pritchard Water Board and allow the Mobile area water and sewer system to take over the system. Unfortunately, another company was awarded the contract. And that's only the beginning of the extent of the corruption that has been exposed by the media. My point is that somewhere along the line, somebody dropped the ball and failed the people of Pritchard. To me, this case illustrates why government accountability and oversight is such a critical component of what we do as public servants. As Representative Clark mentioned earlier, we are a government of the people, by the people, and most importantly, for the people. So I call on us today to do what's right for the people. We must find out what happened, how this could take place for so long, and fix these problems quickly for the people who elected us to serve. We need to understand why complaints were ignored and why our system of oversight and accountability broke down. Obviously, there are gaps in our system, and we must address these gaps, not just for the city of Pritchard, but for all the people of Alabama. On yesterday, the FBI and IRS and state and local agencies, along with the district attorney's office, raided Pritchard Water Board and the home of Nia Bradley, former board manager. Proud to say that today she was finally arrested. Thank you, and I would like to turn it over now to Representative Neil Rafferty of Birmingham, who represents House District 54.
Thank you, Representative Bracey. As you explained your passion for addressing the Pritchard Water Board crisis, it made me realize how important it is that we, as legislators, promote law and policy that is fair, transparent, and accountable, with meaningful oversight. Often the law is passed with good intentions, but it may have unintended consequences that cause far more problems than the original law was meant to solve. That is why I strongly oppose HB 2, also known as the Riot Bill, because it would have a chilling effect on the First Amendment right to free speech and our right to peacefully assemble to petition our government for redress of grievances. We already have myriad laws that address public conduct and protest, but let's be clear. This bill is an egregious example of a poorly written law that not only allows for vast government overreach, but it will also yield a host of unintended and unnecessarily harsh consequences. For example, here's how the bill defined the term riot: an assemblage of 5 or more persons engaging in conduct which creates an immediate danger of and or results to damage to property or injury to persons. Well, that clears it up, except it doesn't. So what does it mean? And who gets to decide what creates an immediate danger? Obviously, this makes no sense at all. And it's nothing more than a knee-jerk reaction to a nationwide protest that occurred last year over the murder of George Floyd by a law enforcement officer. Ironically, these protests were a nationwide demand for greater police accountability. And yet, this law would make them even less accountable for their judgment, discretion, and actions. In fact, this bill doesn't do anything to improve public safety. Instead, it gives law enforcement the ability to arrest people arbitrarily for peaceful, lawful, civil disobedience, and then incarcerate them for a minimum of 30 days based on vague definitions and conjecture about what they think might be someone's intent. Maybe a police officer doesn't like a parent's tone at a school board meeting, or thinks that a union strike is just a little too loud. Would that meet their definition of riot, inciting a riot? Or more importantly, would that justify the minimum of 30 days in jail with no chance of bail or bond? The reality is that we should be doing much more to hold law enforcement accountable, and we need to make serious reforms to our broken criminal justice system. The very last thing we need in Alabama, a state that has one of the highest incarceration rates on the planet, is to figure out more ways to warehouse people in jails and prisons and then throw away the key. As we said earlier, we are a government by the people, of the people, and for the people. So let's stop with the election year shenanigans. Let's stop with the red meat and do the job that we were sent here to do for the people. The Alabama House Democratic Caucus will continue its work for the people and promote public policies that benefit everyone and all families in our great state. While our colleagues across the aisle continue to engage in controversial political distractions like banning critical race theory, defunding public education, or promoting reckless bills that would allow young people in their 20s to ride motorcycles without a helmet, we will keep our focus on the real issues that face Alabama. In closing, our pro-growth, pro-innovation, and pro-Alabama legislative agenda is guided by our unwavering commitment to fairness, equity, and greater opportunities for all Alabamians. Thank you for being here today, and we will now address any questions you may have. Thank you.
Representative Rafferty, I know that you work closely with some of the advocates against the bathroom bill that was just passed yesterday on the House floor. So what is kind of your reaction to that, and any plans to help address some of the other issues you mentioned, like rape and sexual assault? So
the thing is that the sponsor of that bill brought up an issue of rape occurring in bathrooms. And I would say that's terrible and absolutely reprehensible. I would say one rape is enough for us to be able to move and do something about it. The fact is that bill does absolutely nothing to address the issue. It does nothing more than demonize an already marginalized and vulnerable group of youth without actually addressing the issue of rape or sexual assault. I would love to work with the sponsor of that bill and my colleagues across the aisle on things that would actually educate our students about consent, about bodily autonomy, and about a woman's right to her own to own her body, and to make sure that she has total control over when and if any sexual activity occurs.
That bill was actually on a calendar of bills yesterday that, for lack of better words, riled a lot of people up yesterday. Do you think anyone gave it second thought of, okay, what is its intent, and is it actually doing what it says it's going to do, or do we need to go back to the drawing board?
I think that the intent was to create another culture war where we're using children as political footballs under the guise of protecting women and children while absolutely doing nothing to protect women and children. I got questions for my colleagues here too, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
No.
A question really for anyone is just kind of reaction on all three of those bills passing through the House yesterday. I saw a lot of tweets, upset, disappointed, things like that. So anyone?
Anybody? Well, I'll go on and say that they changed the rules up on us. It did not allow duly elected representatives to go up there and do the job that we were elected to do, which is represent our people and our constituents. But I'm happy to step aside and let anybody else jump in here.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues that I have with it was the limited time of debate that was inside of the resolution, the calendar. And because of that, what happens is, like towards the end of session, when we have a disagreement, you send things to a conference committee and you get a report out and you vote on it. So basically, what they did was allow these standing committees that these bills went through to act as if these were conference committees almost, because nobody had an opportunity to make any amendments to any of the legislation that came out. It was pretty much whatever came out of those committees was the way it was going to be. You didn't have an opportunity to debate the amendments. You didn't have any opportunity to do anything to make any changes to the bill. You was gonna be forced to eat what they gave you, and I think that took away the opportunity for all of us to represent our citizens, and then to put a 2-hour time limit on debating issues of that level of importance for the citizens of Alabama was a slap in all of our face. I consider that one particular bill that they closured the police. You know, they had a bill that defunded police, and they closured the police so they couldn't even have a voice in that matter. And I think that's very serious, and people need to be held accountable for these types of actions and shutting down the voice of the citizens of Alabama.
Representative Howard, your bill to raise the minimum wage in Alabama to $10, are you concerned that might hurt businesses, that are located in poorer counties, let's say the Black Belt, where, $9 or $10 an hour, is a more competitive wage than it would be in Mountain Brook or Madison or some places that have higher, lower unemployment and, higher wages and, more gross disposable income?
No, I don't think it will. I did some research and talked to some of the businesses in my area, and I think that it's a fair wage. I also wanted to mention something about the gun bill. It's pretty hypocritical when all those police came down here and told us what they needed, and then you have this body to do something the total opposite. So when you heard all this get tough on crime and we support the police, they showed how much they supported the police yesterday. The Democratic Caucus, we stood with them. And that's all you heard all day long. It's get tough on crime. We're doing this to protect society. Those are the people that are out there on the front line. Those are the professionals. Those are the ones that are pulling those cars over. They really have a good idea about what's going on in this state. And this body, the Republican Party, decided not to listen to them.
If I could, I came in late, so Representative Clark, you were talking about your proposal. Could I give just real quickly to restate what you were talking about when I walked in? I do apologize, ma'am.
Well, one of the things that I mentioned, Randy, was that I have introduced a no excuse early voting bill that, and that many states, and I don't recall the number, I think it's 20 plus states in the union, and bless you, have some form of early voting. Some states with as many as 45 days of early voting. My bill does not provide for 45 days of early voting. We don't need that in Alabama, but we do need early voting. My bill would allow for anywhere from 15 to 20 days of early voting. Within that range would be 2 Saturdays of early voting. I've had, over the years that I've been here, numerous constituents, a diverse group of constituents ask that we allow or have early voting in the state of Alabama. People juggle to get to the polls on election day, especially mothers and single mothers who are going in many directions. They're trying to get kids to school. They're trying to get to work. And despite the fact that law provides that employers give their employees an opportunity to go to the polls and vote, we know that that does not always happen. We know that there are cases where the supervisor may say, if you walk out of that door to go vote, don't let the door hit you. And so folk have got to choose between remaining on the job and going to the polls to vote. And sometimes they just don't get there because they're juggling so much. And if we had early voting, there would be an opportunity for you, if you can't make it today, to go tomorrow. And many of us also have the responsibility of taking our elderly parents and other relatives, disabled relatives, to the polls. I have someone who I assist with absentee voting because I live way downtown Mobile and this person lives almost in Mississippi. And it's rough. It's a challenge for me to get from my poll to that relative's poll on election day. It would be so much easier if I could vote one day and then take another day to go take that relative and other people who may need transportation to the polls to go and vote. So that's one of the things that I talked about just prior to your arrival. And thank you for joining us. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Representative Clark, are you concerned that if we have early voting, that there's the possibility of someone getting access to those ballots that are being held overnight, night after night after night? Could the integrity of the election be compromised?
I am not the least bit concerned about that. Early voting is working in multiple states right now, and it can work in Alabama. In fact, our Secretary of State has touted that we have a safe and secure election system here. And I know that department, our Secretary of State, whoever is going to be in the future, I know that we all working together will do all within our might to make sure that our election system remains safe and secure. Are there any other questions? Kyle, you're telling me that it's time? We'll hang around for a few minutes in case you have